Welcome to the Life Paradox, where reality is stranger than fiction. Leo Parker felt the small velvet box burning a hole in his pocket as he watched Emma Reynolds from the wings of the studio. The bright lights of the Sunrise Chicago morning show cast a golden glow around her as she discussed her newly published cookbook with the hosts. Leo's heart pounded against his ribs, each beat echoing the same thought. This was either the bravest or most foolish decision of his life. "You're sure about this?" whispered Tanya, the show's producer, clipboard clutched tightly against her chest. Leo nodded, unable to form words around the knot in his throat. After 5 years with Emma, he was certain she was the one. Their relationship had blossomed from a chance meeting at a charity event into something that felt eternal. Emma's passion for cooking had initially drawn him in, but it was her kindness and resilience that made him fall in love. What better way to propose than during her moment of professional triumph? Emma laughed at something the host said, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. A nervous gesture Leo knew well. She had worked tirelessly on her cookbook for 3 years, pouring her heart into recipes passed down through generations of her family. This morning show appearance was her big break, and Leo was about to make it even more memorable. Every paradox begins with a question. If you love unraveling life's biggest mysteries, hit subscribe and join the Life Paradox, where every story bends reality. "We're back in 30 seconds, a crew member announced. Leo straightened his tie and took a deep breath. On screen, the hosts were wrapping up their segment with Emma. "And we have to say, these recipes are absolutely delicious," said Melissa, the female host. "Everyone needs to pick up a copy of Home Comfort by Emma Reynolds." "Thank you so much," Emma replied, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Before we wrap up," David, the male host, continued with a mischievous smile, "I believe we have a special surprise for you this morning." Emma's brow furrowed in confusion, and Leo's cue music began to play. His legs felt like lead as he walked onto the set, the studio lights suddenly blindingly bright. Emma's eyes widened as she spotted him, her lips parting in surprise. "Leo? What are you doing here?" she asked, her smile uncertain. The studio fell silent as Leo approached, the cameras tracking his every move. He reached Emma and took her hands in his, feeling them tremble slightly. "Emma," he began, his voice steadier than he expected. "When we met, I was just a man who could barely boil water. You taught me that cooking isn't just about food. It's about love, tradition, and making memories." He dropped to one knee, pulling out the small velvet box. Gasps rippled through the studio audience. Emma's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes growing impossibly wide. "You've made every day of the past 5 years feel like home," Leo continued, opening the box to reveal a vintage-style emerald ring. "Will you marry me?" The studio held its collective breath. Emma's face, initially alight with shock, suddenly drained of color. Her lips trembled, not with joy but with something that looked horribly like panic. Leo's smile began to falter at the edges. I can't," Emma whispered, barely audible. Before Leo could process her words, Emma turned and fled the stage, leaving him kneeling under the merciless glare of the studio lights, the open ring box still extended toward where she had stood. Silence reigned for 3 excruciating seconds before the producer frantically signaled for a commercial break. Leo remained frozen in place, the entire country witnessing his world collapse in real time. The green room of Sunrise Chicago had never felt so suffocating. Leo sat on the edge of a leather sofa, his head in his hands, surrounded by a hurricane of uncomfortable activity. Production assistants darted in and out, avoiding eye contact. The show's hosts had attempted sympathetic platitudes before being called back on air. Now, only Tanya remained, her clipboard forgotten on a nearby table. "I've tried calling her 4 times, Tanya said, clutching her phone. "She's not answering." Leo nodded mechanically. The past 30 minutes existed in a surreal haze. Emma, running off stage, the hasty cut to commercial, being ushered backstage while the hosts improvised an explanation about overwhelming emotions. He kept replaying the moment in his mind, Emma's face shifting from surprise to horror, her whispered refusal, her retreat. "Did she say anything to you?" Leo finally asked, his voice hoarse. "Before the show, was she acting strange?" Tanya hesitated, compassion and discomfort battling on her face. She seemed normal, nervous about the interview, excited about the cookbook. Nothing that would explain this. Leo's phone vibrated in his pocket. His heart leapt, but it wasn't Emma, just a text from his best friend Marcus. "Dude, what happened?" "Call me." Already the proposal was spreading across social media. Leo imagined the clips. Morning show proposal gone wrong. Author flees from boyfriend's proposal. Endless variations of his humiliation packaged for public consumption. By nightfall, they would be trending. "I should go find her," Leo said, standing abruptly. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Tanya asked. "Maybe give her some space." Leo shook his head. 5 years together, and she runs away without an explanation? I need to know why. As he gathered his things, Leo's mind raced through possibilities. Had he misread their relationship entirely? They'd talked about marriage before, hypothetically but positively. They'd moved in together 2 years ago, adopted a cat. Just last month, they'd discussed having children someday. Outside, Chicago's spring air hit his face like a slap. Leo hailed a cab, giving the driver the address of the apartment he shared with Emma. The city passed by in a blur, the skyscrapers indifferent to his heartbreak. Their apartment building looked exactly as it had that morning, when they'd kissed. Goodbye before Emma left for the studio. Leo had secretly arranged to arrive separately, coordinating with the show's producers. Now, that careful planning seemed like mockery. The elevator ride to the 7th floor stretched eternally. Leo rehearsed what he would say, but each potential opening line sounded inadequate. When he reached their door, he paused, key in hand. Suddenly unsure if he still had the right to enter, he knocked instead. Silence. "Emma?" he called, knocking again. The door opened, revealing not Emma, but her sister Olivia, her expression a mixture of pity and something harder to name. "She's not here, Leo," Olivia said. "Where is she?" "I don't know. She called me in tears, asked me to come get some of her things." Olivia stepped aside, revealing a half-packed suitcase on the floor behind her. "She's leaving?" Leo asked, disbelief, making his voice crack. "Just like that?" Olivia sighed. "It's not just like that, Leo. It's complicated." "Complicated how?" "We were happy this morning. We were happy yesterday, and the day before that, and for 5 years before today. What changed? In the last few hours?" "It's not my place to explain," Olivia said, turning back to packing. "She needs to tell you herself." Leo stood in the doorway of his own home, suddenly feeling like an intruder. The apartment looked the same, their photos still on the walls, Emma's cookbook collection still lining the kitchen shelves, but something fundamental had shifted. He walked to the bedroom, where Olivia had emptied half of Emma's closet. On the nightstand, Emma's side, lay an envelope with his name written. In her familiar handwriting, Leo's hands trembled as he picked it up. Leo stared at the envelope, his name inscribed in Emma's flowing script. Olivia had retreated to the kitchen, giving him privacy he wasn't sure he wanted. The apartment felt too quiet, the ticking of the wall clock marking time in a world that had suddenly lost its rhythm. He tore open the envelope carefully, as if rough handling might destroy whatever explanation lay inside. 2 sheets of Emma's cream-colored stationery emerged, covered front and back with her handwriting. "Leo, by now you must be confused, hurt, and angry. You deserve an explanation, though I'm not sure any explanation will be enough. First, I need you to know that I love you. I have loved you every day for 5 years, and that hasn't changed. What happened today wasn't about a lack of love. What you don't know, what I've never told you, is that I was married before. His name was Daniel. We married young, just out of college. The marriage lasted 18 months before he died in a car accident. This was 8 years ago, before we met. I never told you because initially it seemed like ancient history. Then, as we grew closer, I worried how you might see me differently. Eventually, the secret itself became a wall I couldn't break down. With each passing day, telling you felt more impossible. Today, when you proposed, on television, in front of everyone, it wasn't just a proposal. For me, it was my past and present colliding in the most public way possible. I panicked. I couldn't say yes while carrying this lie between us, and I couldn't say no without explanation in front of millions of viewers. Leo stopped reading, his breath caught in his throat. Emma had been married before. The information refused to settle. In his mind, hovering like a strange bird that had flown in through an open window. He had known every detail of Emma's life, or so he thought. They had shared childhoods, college stories, first jobs, first heartbreaks. But not this. Never this. He continued reading. Daniel and I had another connection you should know about. We were both guest chefs on Sunrise Chicago the day we met. He proposed to me 6 months later during a cooking segment on that same show. Seeing those same studio lights, standing on that same stage, it was like seeing a ghost. The cookbook you've supported me through contains many recipes that Daniel and I created together. Every time you praised a dish, every time you encouraged me to include a recipe, I was sharing pieces of my past with you without your knowledge. The guilt of that has been eating away at me. I know this doesn't excuse what I did today. Running away instead of talking to you was cowardly. But I need time to sort through what happened, to figure out why I've kept this secret for so long, and what it means for us. I'm going to stay with Olivia for a while. Please don't try to contact me. Right away. I need space to think clearly, and you deserve time to process this betrayal. Because that's what it is, a betrayal of your trust, even if it came from a place of fear rather than malice. I am so sorry for the pain I've caused you, especially in such a public way. You deserved better than this. With love and regret, Emilio. Read the letter twice more, each time hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something that made more sense. His emotions cycled rapidly: shock at the revelation, anger at the deception, confusion about how he'd missed such a significant part of Emma's life, and beneath it all, a persistent ache of loss. Olivia appeared in the doorway, a mug of tea in her hands. She told you? Leo nodded, still staring at the letter. Did you know? All this time? Yes, Olivia admitted quietly. I wanted her to tell you years ago. Why didn't she trust me? The question emerged softer than Leo intended, vulnerability seeping through the cracks in his voice. Olivia placed the tea beside him and sat on the edge of the bed. It wasn't about trust, not really. Emma moved across the country after Daniel died, changed her name back to Reynolds from his surname, and started over. By the time she met you, she'd spent years pretending that part of her life never happened. She changed her name? Leo felt another wave of disorientation. Even Emma's name held secrets. She was Emma Calloway for those 18 months, Olivia confirmed. When she met you, she'd been Emma Reynolds again for 3 years. Leo ran his hands through his hair, trying to reconcile the Emma he knew with this shadow version who had existed before him. And the cookbook? It contains recipes. From her first marriage? Some of them. Daniel was a chef too. They met in culinary school. A new wave of hurt washed over Leo. Emma's cookbook had been their shared project for years. He'd tasted every recipe, offered feedback, encouraged her when rejections came, all while unknowingly sampling the remnants of her previous life. What do I do now? Leo asked, more to himself than to Olivia. Olivia stood, gathering her purse. Give her the space she asked for. Give yourself time, too. This is a lot to process. As Olivia left with Emma's suitcase, Leo remained seated on the bed, the letter in his hands, surrounded by the hollow space where certainty had once lived. By evening, Leo's phone had become a portal to his own public humiliation. Friends, family members, and colleagues sent an endless stream of messages expressing sympathy, curiosity, and occasionally poorly disguised excitement at being adjacent to viral drama. He silenced notifications after the 20th text, unable to face explaining what he himself didn't fully understand. Against his better judgment, Leo opened social media. The proposal clip had spread like wildfire across platforms, edited and re-edited for maximum emotional impact. Some versions froze on Emma's horrified expression, others on Leo's confusion as she fled. Hashtags multiplied. Proposal fail, sunrise heartbreak, runaway bride. Even without reading comments, Leo could feel thousands of strangers dissecting the most painful moment of his life. A message from Marcus flashed on his screen. I'm outside your building with beer and pizza. No talking required. Leo buzzed his friend up, grateful for the interruption. Marcus entered carrying a six-pack and a large pizza box, his expression carefully neutral. Thanks for coming, Leo said, taking the beer Marcus offered. How are you holding up? Marcus asked, settling onto the couch. Leo laughed hollowly. I've been better. Have you heard from her? Not directly. She left a letter. Leo gestured vaguely toward the bedroom. Turns out she was married before. Her husband died. She never told me. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. Wow, yeah. Leo took a long drink. 8 years ago, apparently. They ate pizza in companionable silence, the television providing background noise neither of them followed. Leo appreciated that Marcus didn't push for details or offer platitudes. The simple presence of someone who knew him before today's disaster was comfort enough. After his second beer, Leo's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. He almost ignored it until curiosity won out. Hello? Is this Leo Parker? A woman's voice asked. Yes. Who's this? My name is Veronica Wells from the Daily Pulse. We're running a feature on public proposals and would love to get your perspective on. Leo hung up, his hand shaking. The vultures are circling, he told Marcus, who winced sympathetically. It'll blow over, Marcus assured him. Something else will go viral tomorrow. Maybe, Leo conceded. But Emma and I still have to live with this. Her cookbook just launched, and now instead of talking about her recipes, everyone's talking about her running away from my proposal. The realization hit him suddenly. Beyond their personal relationship, he might have just torpedoed Emma's professional moment. The cookbook she'd worked on for years would now be forever linked to this spectacle. Whether from anger or heartbreak, the thought made his chest tighten. Have you watched the full clip? Marcus asked cautiously. Leo shook his head. I was there. I don't need to see it again. It's just, some people online are saying there might be something more going on. Emma looked almost frightened, not just surprised. Leo remembered Emma's face, the color draining away, the wide-eyed panic. It wasn't the look of someone simply rejecting a proposal. It was the look of someone seeing a ghost. She was married before, Leo said slowly, pieces connecting. Her first husband proposed to her on the same show. She never told me. That would explain the extreme reaction, Marcus replied. Talk about triggering a memory. Leo's phone pinged with a new message. Despite his resolution to ignore notifications, he glanced down instinctively. It was from Tanya, the show's producer. Just heard back from Emma. She's safe, but not ready to talk. Also, heads up. Our morning segment has gone national. All the major networks are picking it up. The show wants to know if you'd consider coming back on to tell your side. Leo stared at the message in disbelief. They want me to come back on. The show? To what? Be humiliated twice? Marcus took the phone and read the message. That's cold, although... He hesitated. It might be a chance to control the narrative. Right now, everyone's spinning their own version. There is no my side, Leo said bitterly. I proposed to a woman who had a whole life she never told me about. I look like a fool either way. As night fell, Leo sat by the window overlooking the city lights, Marcus having left with a promise to check in tomorrow. In the apartment's silence, Emma's absence felt like a physical thing, a void with weight and substance. Leo opened her letter again, reading it until the words blurred together. She had asked for space, for time. But as clips of his most vulnerable moments circulated endlessly online, Leo wondered if time would heal anything at all. 1 week after the proposal disaster, Leo found himself back at work, hunched over architectural plans in his downtown office. His colleagues maintained a careful distance, their sympathetic glances and hushed conversations following him like a shadow. Leo had requested a private office for the foreseeable future, unable to face the open floor plan where questions and concern lurked around every partition. The lakefront tower adjustments are ready for review, his assistant said. Placing a folder on his desk before retreating quickly, Leo nodded without looking up. Work had become both escape and torture, a distraction from his thoughts, yet a constant reminder of his altered reality. Before the proposal, he'd been Leo Parker, promising young architect. Now he was Leo Parker, the guy from that viral proposal. Fail. His phone lit up with a text from Olivia. Emma's appearing on Sunrise Chicago tomorrow morning. Thought you should know. Leo's stomach dropped. Emma was returning to the scene of the crime, while he remained in limbo, respecting her request for space, despite his desperate need for answers. He typed and deleted several responses before settling on a simple, "Thanks for telling me." That evening, Leo paced his apartment, debating whether to watch the interview. His finger hovered over the record button on the television remote. Part of him needed to see her, to hear her voice again after a week of silence. Another part feared what she might say, how she might frame what happened between them. Sleep eluded him. Leo tossed restlessly, his mind cycling through imagined versions of Emma's interview. Would she paint him as the villain who ambushed her? With a public proposal? Would she reveal their private history to strangers? Or would she simply promote her cookbook, avoiding the elephant in the room entirely? Morning arrived with cruel brightness. Leo called in sick to work for the first time in years, then positioned himself on the couch, coffee in hand, as Sunrise Chicago began. The hosts' practiced cheerfulness felt obscene, given what they'd witnessed in their studio the previous week. Coming up next, Melissa announced, cookbook author Emma Reynolds returns to our show for an exclusive interview about last week's unexpected moment that captivated viewers across the country. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs as commercials played. When the show returned, Emma sat in the guest chair, looking composed but pale. Her hair was pulled back severely, her usual flowing style replaced with something more controlled. She wore a high-necked blue dress Leo had never seen before. Emma, thank you for joining us again, David began, his tone carefully balanced between professional and sympathetic. Many of our viewers witnessed what happened last week during your cookbook promotion. Would you like to address that moment? Emma nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. First, I want to apologize to Leo, who didn't deserve what happened. My reaction wasn't about him or our relationship. It was about my own unresolved past. She proceeded to explain about Daniel, her first marriage, and the connection to Sunrise Chicago. As she spoke, the camera occasionally cut to the hosts, whose expressions of shock seemed rehearsed, though Leo suspected they hadn't known this part of Emma's history either. So when Leo proposed here, Emma continued, it triggered memories. I thought I'd processed long ago. My reaction was panic, pure and simple. It wasn't fair to Leo, who had no knowledge of my past, because I chose not to share it. Have you spoken with Leo since that day? Melissa asked. Emma shook her head, tears gathering in her eyes. I left him a letter explaining everything, but I asked for space. I needed to understand why I kept such an important part of my life from someone I loved deeply. Love, not loved. Present tense. Leo's breath caught. And have you figured that out? David pressed. I think so, Emma said quietly. When Daniel died, I shattered. Rebuilding myself meant compartmentalizing that pain. By the time I met Leo, I'd convinced myself that Emma Calloway was a different person entirely. The longer I kept the secret, the harder it became to reveal. What would you say to Leo now if he's watching? Melissa asked. Emma looked directly at the camera, and Leo felt the weight of her gaze across the digital divide. I would say I'm sorry for the pain I've caused. I would say that loving you wasn't the lie. Hiding my past was. And I would say that I understand if this breach of trust is unforgivable. The interview continued with brief questions about her cookbook, but Leo barely registered the words. Emma's public apology played on repeat in his mind, competing with the hurt and confusion of the past week. When the segment ended, Leo sat motionless, the empty coffee cup cold in his hands. Emma had taken responsibility, had explained herself with dignity despite the public nature of their private tragedy. Part of him admired her courage. Another part remained wounded, questioning everything they'd shared. His phone buzzed with a new text. Unknown number. It's Emma. Can we talk? I'm ready if you are. Leo stared at the message, the 7 words somehow heavier than Emma's entire televised interview. After a week of silence, after watching her bear their private pain to the world, he wasn't sure if he was ready at all. The coffee shop Emma had suggested sat tucked between a vintage bookstore and a florist's shop, far from their usual neighborhood haunts. Leo recognized the strategy. Neutral territory, public enough to prevent a scene, but quiet enough for privacy. He arrived 15 minutes early, claiming a corner table with his back to the wall, a defensive position he recognized even as he took it. Emma arrived precisely on time, as she always did. Leo's chest tightened at the sight of her. Familiar, yet somehow altered, as if the past week had physically changed her. She spotted him immediately but hesitated at the door, gathering courage before approaching. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her voice softer than he remembered. Leo nodded, not trusting himself to speak yet. Up close, he could see the toll of the past week, faint shadows beneath her eyes, a certain tightness around her mouth. "Watched your interview," he finally said as she settled into the chair opposite him. "Was it terrible?" Emma asked, fingers nervously adjusting her napkin. "It was honest. More honest than you've been with me for 5 years." Emma flinched but didn't deny it. "I deserve that." A server approached, momentarily delaying the conversation. They ordered black coffee for Leo, Earl Grey tea for Emma. Small details of routine that now felt like artifacts from another life. When they were alone again, Emma placed a small manila envelope on the table between them. "I brought something I should have shown you long ago." Leo hesitated before opening it. Inside were a handful of photographs. Emma in a simple white dress beside a tall, dark-haired man in a suit, both beaming at the camera. Emma, several years younger, looking at her first husband with unguarded adoration. A couple in chef's whites, laughing in a professional kitchen. "Daniel," Leo said. "Not a question." Emma nodded. "We met at the Culinary Institute. He specialized in classic French technique. I was focused on home-style cooking. We were competitive at first, then friends, then more." Leo studied the photographs, searching the stranger's face for clues to Emma's past. Daniel had been handsome in a conventional way, with an easy smile that reached his eyes. In every image, he and Emma stood close, their comfort with each other evident. "He looks kind," Leo said, surprising himself with the observation. He was very kind, very talented. After graduation, we moved to Chicago for his job at Meridian. We got married 6 months later. "And he died in a car accident?" Leo asked, remembering her letter. Emma nodded, her eyes fixed on the photographs. Black ice on Lakeshore Drive. He was coming home from a late shift. The police said he died. Instantly. Leo watched emotions play across Emma's face. Grief, guilt, something like resignation. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, the question that had circled his mind for a week finally spoken aloud. Emma wrapped her hands around her teacup, as if drawing strength from its warmth. "After Daniel died, I moved to Seattle, changed back to my maiden name, and started over. By the time I returned to Chicago 3 years later, most people in my life didn't know about him. When we met, telling you seemed unnecessary, a sad story from my past that would only cast a shadow. And later?" Leo pressed. "After we moved in together? After we talked about a future? The longer I waited, the more impossible it seemed," Emma admitted. "I told myself it wasn't relevant anymore, that Daniel was a chapter that had closed. But keeping that secret became exhausting. I carried it everywhere, this fear that you'd somehow find out, that you'd see me differently." "I would have understood," Leo said, unexpected anger flaring. "I've told you everything about my life, my parents' divorce, my brother's addiction, every relationship I've ever had. I thought we were building something based on honesty. We were," Emma insisted, tears threatening. "Everything else between us was real, Leo. My love for you has always been real." Leo leaned back in his chair, studying the woman he'd planned to spend his life with. "But incomplete. You shared yourself with me in pieces, keeping parts hidden." Emma didn't deny this. "When you proposed on that stage, the same stage where Daniel proposed, it was like worlds colliding, past and present. I couldn't say yes while hiding such a fundamental truth, and I couldn't explain it all in that moment. So you ran." "I panicked," Emma corrected gently. "I failed you. I failed us." Their drinks sat forgotten as silence stretched between them. Outside, pedestrians passed by, oblivious to the quiet devastation unfolding inside. "The cookbook," Leo said finally. "You said in your letter that some recipes were from your time with Daniel." Emma nodded. "The French-inspired ones, mostly. The coq au vin you love so much was his signature dish. I adapted it over the years, but its bones are his. Another piece of their shared history rewritten." Leo had praised that dish countless times, never knowing he was complimenting a ghost. "What do you want now, Emma?" he asked, exhaustion seeping into his voice. "Honestly, I don't know if I deserve to ask for anything," she replied. "But I miss you. I miss us. I'm not asking for forgiveness right away, but maybe a chance to rebuild trust, to start over with everything in the open." Leo gathered the photographs, sliding them back into the envelope. "I need time," he said. "Everything I thought I knew about us has shifted. I need to figure out who we really are to each other." Emma nodded, disappointment and understanding mingling in her expression. "I understand. For what it's worth, I'm in therapy now. I should have gone years ago after Daniel, but I convinced myself I was fine." As they prepared to leave, an awkward moment passed, both instinctively leaning toward their usual goodbye, kiss before remembering their altered circumstances. Instead, they parted with a painful formality that underscored how much had changed. Walking home alone, Leo felt both heavier and lighter than before. Questions remained. Trust lay in fragments, but at least now he knew the shape of what had broken between them. 3 months passed with the slow, deliberate pace of healing. Leo and Emma maintained cautious distance, their communication limited to occasional text messages and one brief coffee meeting that felt more like diplomatic negotiations than reconnection. Leo had moved temporarily to a sublet across town, needing physical space to match his emotional one. Summer settled over Chicago, wrapping the city in humid embrace. Leo found himself sitting on a bench in Millennium Park one Sunday afternoon, watching families and couples enjoy the sunshine. His phone buzzed with a message from Emma. "My therapist suggested I revisit places that hold difficult memories. I'm going to the Sunrise Chicago studio tomorrow. Would you consider coming with me?" Leo stared at the message, conflicting emotions battling for dominance. Over the past months, he'd cycled through anger, hurt, and eventually, a grudging understanding of Emma's actions. He'd even started seeing a therapist himself, unpacking not just the proposal aftermath, but also his own tendencies toward perfectionism and control. After long consideration, he replied, "What time?" The television studio looked smaller in daylight, stripped of the glamour broadcast lighting provided. Emma waited outside, her hair loose around her shoulders the way Leo had always preferred. They greeted each other with the awkward formality that had become their new normal. "Thank you for coming," Emma said as they were escorted inside by a weekend security guard who'd been briefed on their unusual request. "I'm not sure what you're hoping to accomplish," Leo admitted. Emma offered a small smile. "Honestly, I'm not completely sure either. But facing this place together feels important somehow." The empty studio stood silent, chairs stacked against walls, cameras draped with protective covers. Their footsteps echoed as they approached the spot where Leo had proposed. Where Emma had fled. "It looks so ordinary," Leo observed, scanning the darkened set. "Daniel proposed during a cooking segment," Emma said quietly. "We were making soufflés. His was hidden in the ramekin. When I opened it, there was a ring inside." Leo absorbed this information, trying to imagine Emma years younger, experiencing a moment of joy in the same space where she'd later experience panic. "Creative." "It was," Emma agreed. "Very Daniel. He loved grand gestures." "And I unintentionally recreated his proposal in the same place," Leo said, the cosmic irony not lost on him. "Not exactly the same," Emma corrected. "His was planned with the producers as part of a segment. Yours was—" She hesitated. "A well-intentioned ambush," Leo finished for her, a hint of rueful humor in his voice. "I should have told you everything. Long before that day," Emma said, turning to face him fully. "I robbed us both of the chance to integrate my past into our story. I was so afraid of being defined by loss that I created an even bigger one." They stood in silence, the empty studio witnessing this quiet moment of truth between them. Leo studied Emma's face, the face he'd woken up to for years, the face he still searched for in crowds despite himself. "I've been thinking a lot about trust," Leo said eventually. "Not just what you kept from me, but how I might have contributed to an environment where you felt you couldn't share this." Emma looked surprised. "You didn't do anything wrong." "Maybe not intentionally," Leo conceded. "But I've realized I can be unbending sometimes. I like things neat and orderly, life mapped out. I wonder if that made it harder for you to introduce something messy and painful into our narrative." "That's generous of you," Emma said softly. "But the responsibility was mine. I made a choice every day not to tell you." As they exited the studio into the bright afternoon sun, something shifted subtly between them, a hardened layer beginning to soften around the edges. They walked together toward the lakefront, their steps gradually falling into familiar rhythm. "My cookbook is going into a second printing," Emma said after a while. Leo smiled genuinely. "That's wonderful. You deserve it." "The publicity from the proposal didn't hurt, ironically enough," she admitted, "though I'd trade all the sales in the world to undo what happened." "I wouldn't," Leo said, surprising them both. Emma stopped walking. "What?" "I wouldn't undo it," Leo clarified. "It was painful, yes. But I'd rather know the truth, even delivered badly, than live in a carefully constructed fiction. They found a bench overlooking the water, a safe, neutral space to continue their conversation. Lake Michigan stretched before them, vast and changeable. "I've been seeing Daniel's parents," Emma confessed. "For the first time since the funeral. They want to meet you someday, if that's not too strange." Leo considered this. A month ago, even a week ago, the suggestion would have seemed impossible. Now it felt like a door cautiously opening. "Maybe someday," he agreed. "Leo," Emma said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment, "I'm not asking for answers right now, but I need to know if you think there's any chance for us. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday." Leo watched a sailboat glide across the horizon, taking his time with the question. The automatic answer, the easy dismissal or eager reconciliation, would dishonor what they'd both been through. "I think," he said carefully, "that we need to build something new. Not repair what was, but create something different. Something with no hidden corners." Emma nodded, a single tear tracking down her cheek. "I'd like that." "It would mean starting slowly," Leo continued. "Friendship first, learning each other. Again." "Friendship," Emma repeated, testing the word. "I can do that." As afternoon faded toward evening, they walked the shoreline, talking more openly than they had in months, perhaps more honestly than they ever had. Leo shared discoveries from his therapy sessions. Emma described her journey to reconcile her past and present selves. The conversation flowed with cautious warmth, neither pushing too far nor retreating too quickly. When they finally parted ways at sunset, Leo made a decision that surprised him with its rightness. "Would you like to have dinner next week? As friends," he clarified. Emma's smile reached her eyes for the first time that day. "I'd like that very much." In the golden light of the setting sun, standing 6 feet apart, yet somehow closer than they'd been in months, they began the delicate work of building something new from the fragments of what had broken. 1 year after the proposal that wasn't, Leo sat at his drafting table, finalizing plans for a lakefront renovation project. Morning light streamed through his office windows, catching on the framed magazine cover on his wall. Architectural Digest featuring his recent design. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Still on for 7 tonight?" Leo smiled as he typed back a confirmation. Their weekly dinners had become a fixture in both their lives, evolving from cautious conversations between near strangers to comfortable evenings between dear friends. Sometimes they cooked together in his new apartment. Other times they tried restaurants neither had visited before, neutral territory for their rebuilding. Tonight was different. Tonight marked 1 year since the Sunrise Chicago disaster, a milestone they'd decided to acknowledge rather than avoid. Leo left work early, stopping by the florist for a bouquet. Not roses, which felt too laden with romantic expectation, but sunflowers that spoke of brightness and new beginnings. He'd suggested cooking at his place, a meal they would prepare, together as they'd done countless times in their shared past. Emma arrived precisely at 7, a bottle of wine in one hand and a small wrapped package in the other. "For you," she said, handing him the gift. "Though maybe wait until after dinner to open it." In the kitchen, they moved around each other, with the practiced ease of people who know each other's rhythms. Emma chopped vegetables while Leo prepared a marinade, their conversation flowing naturally between work stories and shared acquaintances. No topic was off limits anymore. They had learned that silence bred secrets, and secrets had nearly destroyed them. "I ran into Tanya from Sunrise Chicago yesterday," Emma mentioned, sliding chopped bell peppers into a bowl. "She said viewership spiked again last week when they did their Where Are They Now segment on viral moments." "Did they try to contact you for that?" Leo asked, pausing in his preparation. "They did. I declined. Some things should remain private." Leo nodded appreciatively. The public nature of their rupture had been difficult enough. Their healing deserved protection. As they ate dinner on Leo's balcony overlooking the city, a comfortable silence settled between them. Chicago's skyline glittered against the darkening sky, the same view they'd shared for years from a different vantage point. "Sometimes I wonder how different things would be if I'd just proposed at home," Leo mused, swirling wine in his glass. "Privately, without cameras." Emma considered this. "I probably would have said yes while still hiding my past. We'd be married. By now, but built on a foundation with fault lines." "You think we're better off now?" "I think we're more honest now," Emma replied carefully. "Better remains to be seen." After dinner, Leo opened Emma's gift, a first edition of his favorite architecture book, one he'd mentioned months ago and forgotten about. The thoughtfulness of it, the proof she still listened and remembered, touched him deeply. "Thank you," he said simply. "It's perfect." Emma smiled. "There's an inscription." Leo opened the cover to find Emma's handwriting on the first page. "For Leo, who taught me that rebuilding can be as beautiful as the original design. With love and gratitude, Emma." "I've been thinking," Leo said, setting the book aside carefully. "About us, about this past year." Emma nodded, her expression open but guarded. They had carefully maintained the boundaries of friendship, neither pushing toward reconciliation nor closing the door on possibility. "I miss you," Leo continued. "Not just what we were, but what we could be now, after everything." "I miss you, too," Emma admitted. "Every day." "I'm not proposing again," Leo clarified with a small smile. "Once was quite enough. But I am suggesting that maybe it's time to try being more than friends." Emma reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "Are you sure? There's no rush." "I'm sure that I want to find out," Leo said. "We're different people now than we were a year ago. I like who you are. I like who I am when I'm with you." Later that evening, they stood on the balcony, the city spread before them like possibilities. Emma leaned her head against Leo's shoulder, his arm wrapped comfortably around her waist. Neither spoke for a long while, content in the quiet companionship they'd rebuilt with such care. "I saw my therapist yesterday," Emma said eventually. "She asked if I still feel like I'm living two separate lives, before Daniel and after." "What did you tell her?" Leo asked. "That I'm finally living one integrated life. That the past doesn't need to be buried to be survived." Leo considered this. "And us? Where do we fit in that integrated life?" Emma turned to face him, her expression serene in the soft glow from the apartment behind them. "You're my present, Leo. Maybe my future, too, if we decide that's what we want. But whatever happens, we're building something real now. Something true." In the distance, a car horn honked, reminding them of the city continuing around their private moment. Life went on, messy and unpredictable, resistant to perfect planning or public spectacle. Leo leaned down, kissing Emma softly, their first kiss in a year, gentle as a question. When they parted, both were smiling. "No more secrets?" Leo asked. "No more secrets," Emma promised. "Just stories we haven't shared yet." They stood together watching the city lights, two people who had weathered a storm of their own making and emerged changed, but intact. The viral moment that had exposed their deepest fractures had faded from public memory, but its lessons remained. That love requires truth, that healing demands patience, and that sometimes the most meaningful proposals aren't the ones made on bended knee before an audience, but the quiet decisions to try again, differently and better than before.